Peter was talking a whole lot of big talk. And now, after they had gotten the instructions in Matthew 28 and 10 to go to Galilee, to a mountain, Matthew chapter 28, verse 16, go to Galilee to a mountain and to wait. To wait on Jesus, because Jesus told them in Matthew, I'll be there. And now we come to our text. Because in John chapter 21, they are in Galilee, and the text would indicate that they are first in the location where Jesus told them to be. I really need to explain this to you. They were in the location. They were in Galilee. But by the time we get to the text, they were in the location Jesus told them to be, but they were not in the place where Jesus told them to be. Because Jesus told them to be in a mountain, or at a mountain, but now they find themselves down on the seashore. If you notice in the text, they were in Galilee, the right location, but not at the right place. Galilee was the location. The place was up in the mountains. You're going to discover that they were at the Sea of Tiberias. Now, I need to explain this to you because it seems to be there a contradiction when it talks about the location. The Sea of Galilee was the region. The Sea of Tiberias was the name that the Romans gave this particular sea. It was called Gennesaret in the Old Testament. It was the right location, but the disciples were not in the right place. And if you notice in our text that 7 of the disciples followed Peter, 4 of the disciples were in the place and in the location Jesus told them to be, but 7 of them were following Peter. Peter left the place and went to the seashore, and what Peter said to the disciples, I'm going fishing. And he said that because Jesus had delayed his coming. He told them to be in a certain location. And in that location, he gave them a place to be. But Jesus had delayed his coming. So what the text says, verse 3, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. Now, he told us we were going to be fishermen of men. In Luke chapter 5, we ain't doing no preaching. And we ain't doing no fishermen of men. So Peter says, I'm going back to doing what I was doing before Jesus ever called me. And he says, I'm going fishing. And they said, we will go with you. The text indicates not all 11 said that. 4 remained in the mountain where Jesus told them to be, and 7 of them left the place and went down to the seashore, got in a boat, and went back fishing. And they went out, got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. And boy, if I had time, and I don't have time to explain it to you, that whenever you get outside of the will of God, whenever you're not where God tells you to be, and whenever you go back to doing what God had instructed you to do, you will fail. Even though you're good at it, because these were expert fishermen, but the text says they caught nothing and they had fished all night. And how they fished and why they fished at night was interesting, because in the daytime the fish were scarce, but at night the fish would gather to feed. And what a fisherman would do, he would get in his boat, he would put a lantern on the tip of his boat, and then the fish would be attracted to the light, and so the margin of success was greater at night. But in this night they caught nothing. simply because Jesus told them to meet him in Galilee on a mountain, but they left the place where Jesus told them to meet him, and they left it and went down to the seashore, got into a boat, and said, we're going back to our old way. And boy, I need to tell you, you need to be patient with God. He'll show up directly. He'll show up on time. He may not come when you want it, but wait on it. Four disciples are still up in the mountain. 7 of them decided to follow Peter. You know, Peter was the impulsive one. He would act without thinking. He was impulsive, and he would just get real aggravated. He had short temper, and he had no patience, and so he said, I'm out of here. Jesus told us to meet him here. He's not here. We are here, and since he ain't here, I'm out. So it says they went out, got in a boat, and they caught nothing. Boy, if I had time, but I don't. See, that's why you can't succeed at what you're trying to do, because you hadn't done what the Lord told you to do. Because I like John MacArthur's interpretation. John MacArthur says it is about obedience and disobedience. Whenever you obey God, he says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things shall be added unto you. But when you don't follow the will of God and be obedient to God, I don't care what you do, it ain't going to work. I don't care how good you are at it, how bad you want it to be successful. Only what you do that it is the will of God works. That's why he said, let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Whenever you live a disobedient life and you're not where God told you to be and doing what God told you to do, it ain't going to work. And I did say ain't. I don't care how much you try to be successful. Because in Luke chapter 5, he says, I'm going to make you fishers of men. But now they going back being fishers of fish. And the text says they caught. I wish I could listen. I ain't got no other way to explain it to you. Nothing means nothing. I don't have time to explain to you the language and the etymology of the text. The syntax of the text literally means that they had the nets, they had the fish in the water, they had the boat in the water, and they cast their nets in the water, and the fish stayed away from all that effort for nothing. And some of y'all wasting a whole lot of effort doing nothing. Boy, if I had time to explain this to you, sometimes God will let your effort be for nothing to teach you a couple of things, but I don't have time to explain to you what he's trying to teach you, but one of them is patience. If you don't ever develop patience as a servant of God, you'll never be successful, because God doesn't move because you want him to move. He moves when he gets ready to move. God ain't no cosmic butler that gives you everything you want, when you want, how you want it, under the circumstance you want it. He moves when he gets ready. Don't listen to the prosperity gospel. You can't name it and claim it. You got to learn to wait. They that wait upon the Lord, he shall renew their strength. Wait, I tell you, wait on. In verse 4, they had fished all night And just as the day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. And I don't have time to explain to you, but Jesus can be watching you while you're failing. You better hear me. He can be watching you while you're failing and just standing there watching and doing nothing. You don't know that he's there, but he's there. And he saw that they had been fishing all night. They couldn't see him, but he saw. But they didn't see him until the breaking of. And Jesus stood there. Skip Heigl gives dramatic emphasis on the text, and Jesus, and you know he was in his unglorified state, and he gives imagination to the text that says Jesus probably went to the place where he told him to be, was at the mountain, and wasn't before that. And he said, "Where, Peter?" And they said, "Peter ain't here." And so Jesus went down to the seashore and just stood in the dark watching them fish. And Jesus told the fish, "Don't go nowhere near that net." Don't go nowhere near the boat or the net. And the fish told Jesus, "Okay."
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Obey.
And yet the disciples didn't know who he was. And then, listen, I really got to explain this to you, because the Greek in verse 5, it seems like it's an enduring term, but it's really a term of rebuke and scorn, and Jesus is really sarcastically mocking them. And you see the word children is not a good translation of that word, but it's really, guys, have you caught anything? It's not an enduring term, because you're not where I told you to be, doing what I told you to do. He really mocks them and said, "Guys, have you caught any?" And really the text says, "Have you caught any fish?" Well, I don't have time to explain that to you, but listen, it's really embarrassing because they're expert fishermen. It's really embarrassing because they're on the Sea of Galilee where fish are abundant. But yet they catch no.
Yes, sir.
And they answer him, "No." They ain't caught nothing. And then he says to them, and if I had time, I'd explain to you, boy,
Come on now.
see, this is obedience. Because first is disobedience, they catch nothing. Because he told them to be in the mountains in the location of Galilee, and the place. Up there in the mountains, wait on him. That's what he said. If you don't believe me, go back to Matthew 28:10, Matthew 28:16. He said, "Go to Galilee, to the location and the places in the mountains." But now he's going to tell them something, and they're going to respond in obedience. And I want you to see how disobedience, they catch nothing. And obedience, they get more than what they were expecting. He said, "Cast your nets on the right side, and you will find something." Well, I don't want to be too street, but I can tell you, sometimes you fishing on the wrong side. That's why you ain't catching nothing. You're fishing on the wrong side. And the reason why you're fishing on the wrong side, because first of all, you hadn't been commanded to go fishing. You were supposed to be up in the mountain waiting on Jesus. And see, you got to know when it's time to fish and when it's time to wait. And some folk are fishing when your army.
Yes, sir. Tell it, Pastor.
Yeah, somebody.
It says, cast your nets on the right side of the boat and you will find some. Now, listen, I got to come down, but I'm explaining this to you. They did not take the boat out of the Sea of Galilee and go to another sea to get fish. But the same place they didn't get any fish, now they catch an abundance. And the only thing that made the difference is Jesus told them where. And see, you think you need to change locations and places in order to be blessed. But what you really need to do is get in God's will, listen to God's word, and in a place where nothing is happening, something.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on, preacher.
And so the text says, so they cast it on the right side, and now they were not even able to haul in that because of the quantity of fish. I'm going to calm down.
That's all right. Come on,
See, you don't know that obedience will give you a quantity of what you need and what you've been fishing for. Start obeying God. See, I got some witnesses in here, but they scared to testify because you'll take their bragging as, you'll take their testifying as bragging, but they're really not bragging. They're just telling you what it will mean if you will obey God, seek the kingdom first, and how God will give you more than what you need. You think they brag? They ain't bragging, they are testifying that I've been young and now I'm old. But I've never seen the righteous forsaken. And he's been supplying your needs according to his riches in glory. And because of the quantity, and the disciple whom loved Jesus, therefore said to Peter, it's Jesus.
Yes, sir.
I really want to take my time to explain to you
Go ahead.
verse 7. Because this is Peter now, remember? Peter, the impulsive one, that one who would act then he would think. Instead of thinking and then acting. I want you to notice the difference between in this particular text. And you remember, we know who Peter is. We know Peter is used to getting out of the boat. The first time we saw him get out of a boat, it was in a storm. And Jesus was in the mountain and he watched them in the middle of the sea struggling to get through a storm. And Jesus left the top of the mountain, came down to the seashore, but he didn't stop at the shore. He walked on the water. And Peter saw him come in a storm. And because it was Jesus, Peter got out the boat. Because he saw Jesus walking on the water. Peter started walking on the water. Toward Jesus. But now this is a little different. Because Jesus wasn't walking on the water, he was standing on the seashore.
Yes, sir.
So you can say what you want to about Peter. Peter got out of the boat in a storm, but now he got out of a boat because of excitement, exuberation, and enthusiasm. He didn't care where Jesus was. He went to Jesus the first time because Jesus was coming to him. And now Jesus stood on the seashore about 100 yards from Peter. And Peter got out of the boat, jumped in the water, and started swimming. And he didn't take his clothes off according to the text. He put more clothes on, which made his buoyancy a little more.
Go ahead, preacher. Go on, finish.
Man, I'm trying to explain something to you. First time he got out of the boat, Jesus was on the water, walking. Peter got out and started walking toward Jesus. Now Jesus stood on the seashore, and Peter jumped in the water and started swimming. And in verse, it says, and he put on his outer garment, which was going to weigh him down a little bit and impede him. But he didn't care. He didn't care how heavy his load was. He didn't care how difficult the swim was going to be. And he didn't care how long it took for him to get to Jesus. All he knew is, I got to get to Jesus.
Yes, Lord.
Man, there's so much in that, but I can't. I don't have time.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Sometimes you got to get out the boat.
That's right now.
Not because Jesus is on the water, but because Jesus is on the shore.
Yeah.
Because Jesus showed up in the situation when you looked like you were at the worst point. You were in a moment of failure. And Jesus showed up, and you knew because Jesus told you to do something. You done it, and you got success. And now you want to get to Jesus just to tell him,
Yes, Lord.
thank you.
Yes, Lord. Go ahead and preach.
And then, I love the text, he threw himself in the sea. And the other disciples, they came in the boat. They didn't jump in. Did nobody jump in? But they said, look, he crazy. They stayed in the boat and they started dragging the full net of fish to the bank. They were not far from the land, about 100 yards. And when they got to the land, they saw a charcoal fire in the place, and fish laying on it, and bread. Now, I really have to explain this to you because the first question he asked, I told you it was not a word of compliment, but it was a word of rebuke and really mockery, because he said, do you have any fish? It's not like Jesus didn't have fish already on the grill. They just hadn't caught none. Because by the time they got to the seashore, Jesus had fish already on. And somebody asked the question, where did he get them? The same place he got.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
2 fish, 5 loaves, and fed 5. Jesus hadn't cast the net, didn't cast the rod, but he spoke.
Help somebody.
When they got there, they saw fish laying on it, and bread. Then Jesus said unto them, bring some of your fish. You just caught. Now, Jesus didn't need their fish, but Jesus used their.
Yes, sir.
Y'all better listen to me. Because this text is saying Jesus didn't need their fish, but he did use your. He don't need what you got, but he can use. Because if you don't give it, he don't need it. Because he owns a cattle on 1,000. But he can use it if you're willing. See, you think God needs what you got. He don't need what you got. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to him. He owns everything. And one old preacher said, not only does he own the cattle on 1,000 hills, but he owns the hills. The earth is the Lord, the fullness thereof, and they that dwell there. He don't need what you got. I know you need it. He don't. Because he already had fish on the grill. And the smell had hit their nose before they ever got to the shore. He didn't need what they had, but he used.
Yes, sir. Teaching moment.
I'm going to behave today.
Yep.
All right.
And listen, this is verse 11 is important. Because 7 of them went fishing, 6 of them stayed on the boat, and they were struggling to get the large quantity of fish to the seashore. So when Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of fish, about 153 fish. And although there were so many fish, the net was not, man, I don't have time. There's so much in there that I didn't need to teach. First of all, 6 of them couldn't get the haul of fish to the boat. And if you read other translations, you would discover Peter was already on the shore, and Peter took a line from the boat, and by himself, he pulled the whole net of fish to the seashore. And then the other thing is this in the text. Even though there was 153 fish weighing about 2 pounds apiece, which the total weight, 2 times 50, 153 is 300 pounds of fish. And all of those fish, the net did not, they didn't lose one fish from capture to recovery. So y'all, listen, I know I done shot some over your head. But let me tell you, God will keep everything in your net.
Yes, you will.
Ain't nothing gonna fall out.
Yes, sir.
Ain't nothing gonna, see, some of y'all can testify. You had some big holes, and it looked like you was gonna lose something, but God kept it all.
Yes, sir. Say it, preacher.
And then Jesus said, come have a little breakfast. And I got to close because I don't have time. I knew it was going to take a minute to just unfold this text, but Jesus says, come have a little breakfast. None of the disciples dared to ask him who he was. So Jesus gave them, and I'm closing, gave fish and the bread to them. And I really need to explain this to you. He met their physical needs before he started asking them spiritual questions. Because it's interesting, the text says that Jesus was interested in getting them breakfast because one commentator says breakfast was important because they had been fishing all night. And the weariness of fishing at night, the weariness of the long night, and the weariness of not being successful at fishing had tired them out. And whenever you're physically tired, you become mentally tired. And so Jesus wanted to restore them physically before he started imparting into them spiritual. He wanted to get them fed, and so he got them nutritionally built up, nutritionally restored, and then he started talking that spiritual talk.
Yes, sir. Come on, preacher.
God ain't interested in you not having your needs met.
Yeah. Come on now.
You living in impoverished. So he gives them breakfast. This was the 3rd time that Jesus revealed himself to his disciples after him being raised from the dead. I don't really have time because I got about 3 minutes, but I'm going to explain this to you. This chapter is about all 11 of the disciples. Primarily about the 7 disciples that went with Peter on the boat. But it's primarily about Peter Because Peter needed to be restored. Peter needed to be reconciled. Peter had failed Jesus because he had denied Jesus. But now Jesus is finna ask Peter specifically 3 questions. Because Jesus needed to restore Peter, need to reconcile with Peter, need to really restore Peter so that he could use Peter in Acts chapter 2. And I'm trying to tell somebody, you can come back from failure. I don't care how you messed up, stumbled up, slipped up. It ain't over until God says it's over. You can't get in God's way. I'm going to preach the rest of the chapter next week. But I'm telling you, you can come back. Come back from faith. I got a friend of mine who loves to work out. I do too. Love to ride bikes. I do too. 18, I broke my leg and my femur popped out of my leg because I got hit in the knee with a helmet, and I missed my last senior year back football, but it healed, and I'm now about 54, 55 years old. But last year, the injury reminded me that it was down there. Got up one morning. I've been talking a lot of stuff to my friend. We meet down at Robbins Field to run and to work out. And we are so egotistical and prideful. We challenge each other to a race. One lap. The week we were supposed to race, my knee wasn't right. All swole up, fluid in it, went to the doctor. And he thought I had backed out because I was a coward. And because I thought I couldn't beat him. So he thought it was over. And me being a person who had a little pride, went by the shop and said, look man, my knee's swollen. I'm limping. And I can't race. You just didn't want to race in the first place. So he went around bragging, I backed out of the race. But he didn't know I had a plan to come back from failure. Went to the doctor stuck a big needle in there, drained the fluid out, pumped a little steroids in. He didn't know I was coming back from failure. I just told you what the doctor did. He took a big needle in to get some stuff out. And it's called inflammation that makes the joint of your knee like cement and you can't move it. And so he went in and pulled some stuff. Because I needed to come back from failure. And maybe God in your failure is trying to pull some stuff out that makes you unable to run like you want to run. Run like you need. He didn't know I was coming back from failure. When I was laying on the table, he didn't tell me this when I got there, before I got there, but then he said, I need to put something in. Took another big needle and took it, filled it full of steroids, and he shot it into my, because I was coming back from failure. Maybe God in your failure is trying to get some stuff out of you, but also trying to get some stuff in you. Because what the steroids were going to do, it was going to fight the inflammation that caused my knee to feel like cement in my joint. And so he needed to put it in there so that I could get back my mobility because I was coming back from failure. Maybe God trying to put something in you to keep you from being so stiff
Oh no.
That ain't why I started telling the story. I started telling the story that I told you I was challenged to a race. And the guy said I backed out because I was a coward. Then one morning I decided to get up when I got my stuff out and my new stuff in. I bike about 20 miles a day. And one day he was on his way to drop his kids off at the school in East Tupelo, and that was on my biking route. And he saw me on my Fuji bike riding down the highway. And we came to the same intersection at the same light. And he wouldn't even look at me, but I kept on riding. And then I knew that he knew I saw him, and I know he saw me. I called him when he got to the shop, said, I'm ready to race tomorrow. He said, I can't, my schedule is full. Because he didn't know and didn't think I was going to come back from faith. It is a whole lot of folk don't think you coming. The door of the church is open. I'm telling you, Jesus will let you come back from failure. Don't you ever give up. Don't you ever give in. Don't you ever throw in the towel. Don't you ever wave the white flag. I don't care how bad it looks, how bad the circumstance is. I don't care what you've done in your past, how many times you failed, how many times you denied him, how many times God will bring you back from failure. Failure has a purpose because God has a plan. Every head bowed and every eye closed. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus Christ, and you've not accepted him as your personal Savior, you can come today. If you're here today and you've not confessed Jesus Christ with your mouth because you believe in Jesus Christ in your heart, you can be saved today. You can come if you want to be a member of the church.